Okay, so today we're going to learn how to make a personal challenge app using Unity and C#. So what this is going to do, this is going to give the user, if I hit challenge me, it's going to give me a random challenge, and then I can also add new challenges to this list. So my new challenge could be go for a walk, and then when I type in or hit add challenge, it's going to add that as one of the possible challenges we could have. So stay tuned. Okay, so today we're going to learn how to make a personal challenge app using Unity and C#. So first thing I like to do whenever I'm doing something that uses a lot of user interface elements is just kind of draw it out to make sure I like the way it looks. So the main way our app is going to look is we're going to have this main screen here where we have some title text at the top, and then we have a panel in here where we're giving out the user their challenge for the day. And then let's have two buttons down here. Let's have one button to add a new challenge to the list so that you can personalize this if you want to. And we'll have the second button next to it be a button so that you can get your challenge for the day. Now when they press this add new challenge button, let's have a new panel come on. So it's going to be a panel that overlays the entire screen. And on this new panel, we'll have some text at top that says something like add a challenge. And then inside here, we'll have an input field for the user to type in their own challenge. So type text. And then we'll have a button at the bottom that allows them to add that challenge to a list that we have of challenges. And then when they press this button, it goes back to the main screen. So that challenge will now be added to the list. So in the previous apps that I've shown you guys how to make, we've kept our UI to just one screen. Now we're going to be using two screens, and we're going to be using an input field. Because we're using an input field, we're also going to be using a feature in Unity called a list, which is similar to an array, but Unity plays nicer with lists as far as adding and subtracting stuff to it. So let's get started. I'm using Unity 5.6.1, which is the latest version of Unity as of today. I'm going to create a new project. Now, when you're doing stuff in the UI like this, you can either make it 2D or 3D. It doesn't really matter. I prefer to work in 2D if I'm just doing UI stuff. And I'm going to call this challenge list. Choose where you want to save it. I'm saving my project to the desktop. And I'm going to turn Unity Analytics off because I don't need to use it for this. And then I'll click Create Project. Unity's going to think for a second while it's creating the basic stuff. Now, Unity isn't the most ideal place to make this, but I'm using this more as kind of a way to just teach basic computer science fundamentals and just a familiarity with C#. Some of these ideas are things that you can add to actual games, like the idea of using an input field to add stuff to a list, the idea of getting something randomly from a list, the idea of just using the UI in general is something that a lot of people can use for a lot of different projects. Okay, so when your Unity opens up, yours probably doesn't look like this, especially if you just downloaded it. It's probably going to look like the default layout. I'm not a huge fan of the default layout, especially when I'm working with UI, because I like to be able to see where stuff is going. So to change your layout, it's this button in the upper right-hand corner, and I prefer a 2x3 split. Now I'm also going to be having this as if the phone's in portrait mode. By default, Unity is in free aspect, which, if you can take a look here, as I change the viewport, it changes the camera's proportions in the scene. So as I make the viewport skinnier, it makes the camera skinnier. We're going to be having this be so that it kind of fits to the specific phone we're looking at here. So to do that, I'm going to go over here to where it says free aspect, click that drop down. I'm going to add a new drop down for 9x16, which is what most iPhones are, and most Android phones are 10x16, but since we're using the UI, 9x16 should be fine. So if you don't have any of these set up, you can just go down here to this plus button, give your new resolution a name, like say portrait mode. Change this from fixed resolution to aspect ratio. fixed resolution is looking for how many pixels by how many pixels, whereas aspect ratio is having it change the number of pixels based on the ratio of width to height. And I'm going to set this to 9 by 16. If it's an Android phone, it's usually 10 by 16, but I'm not going to actually make this because I already have a few in my scene, so I'm just going to hit cancel. And I'll get a little red error down here, but it doesn't mean anything. Okay, so I'm just going to use one of my preset portrait modes. One thing I like to do whenever I'm setting up a project in Unity is I really don't like this blue color that Unity uses. So I tend to like to reset my camera background. So go in here, Untitled, find your main camera, and then over here on the main camera in the inspector window, you can see a lot of different options about the camera that you can adjust. So a lot of this is stuff, no, not a lot, almost all of this is stuff we're not going to be using, but I will change the background color from this blue. Let's make it black this time. The other thing I like to do is I like to dock my project folder underneath my hierarchy, just to give me more room to work over here in the scene view and to look at in the game view. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new canvas. So to create a new object, you can go over here and either choose Create, UI, and then Canvas, or you can right-click in the hierarchy. You can go UI, Canvas, or you can go up to the top of the screen where it says Game Object, choose UI, and then Canvas. I'm going to just create, and then I'm going to create a canvas. And this canvas creates this object that is super huge. You have to zoom out a lot to be able to see it. The reason it's this big is because it's creating itself like an overlay onto the camera. If you want to zoom out, you can either use your scroll wheel, or if you hold down Alt and right-click, and then move your mouse up or down, if you don't have a scroll wheel available to you, that will zoom it in and out, and that works on both Macs and PCs. So I've got this canvas, which is just essentially like a container for all the UI elements to fit inside. So I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to create some UI elements inside of it. The first thing I'm going to make is some text, and this text is going to be my title text that I'm going to have at the top of the scene. Now if you can see here, it creates this text, and it's kind of this gray color. Because my background is black, I'm going to turn that text into white. I'm going to move this box to the top of the screen. Zoom in a bit here just so I can see it better. Make it bigger, and I'm going to change this to Personal Challenge. I'm going to center this in its container, both left and right and up and down. And then I'm going to make its text expand to fit how much space it has by clicking this Best Fit button down here. Okay, now the other thing I need to do, for example, right now it looks fine if I have it this way, but if I hit play, it's not going to be at the top of the screen anymore. See how it kind of moved down? That's because of these anchors that are in the scene. If I want this to stay exactly where it is, then I'm going to move the anchors to be around the box. Otherwise, it maintains a constant proportion away from the anchor. So like in this scene, it was a certain number of pixels away from the anchor. When I maximized it, it stayed that many pixels away from the anchor. So now if I hit play, you can see that it's exactly where I want it to be, and it's the right size. Okay, so next I'm going to add a panel to display our personal challenge for the day. I'm also going to rename this text so that I don't forget what it is. Call this title text. Now I want this panel to be a child of the canvas, so I'm going to highlight the canvas, right click, go to UI, and create a new panel. When a panel gets created, it takes up the entire scene, or the entire UI. I'm going to resize this. I'm just going to move it down, and then I'm going to move this up so that I have enough room for those buttons down here. And then I'll move it just a notch over from the sides so it doesn't look too crowded. I'm also going to resize these anchors for it, for the same reason I resized the anchors for the text. So I'm going to move this down, move this down. Okay. Also, the panel comes in with some alpha, meaning it's partly transparent. So if you look over here on the panel, there's an image script attached to it. This kind of white and black line at the bottom is how transparent it is. The more black it is, the more transparent. The more white it is, the more opaque. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm just going to make it completely opaque, just so it has a better contrast with our background. I'm also going to rename this object in the hierarchy to challenge panel. Now I'm going to, as a child of the challenge panel, make our text that's going to display our daily challenge. So here's the text. I'm going to move it up, and I'm going to have it take up most of the box. Again, I'm going to just move it over just a tiny bit on the left and right hand side, just so that it's not right up against that edge there. Also, by default, these anchors are going to be in the center, so I'm just going to resize these anchors too. I'm going to have them go to the box. So there we go. And I'm going to change this text to say challenge, just so I know what it is. I'm going to make it black instead of this default gray that Unity text is. And I'm also going to choose best fit so that it takes up the space that it's given. Okay. Might as well center it as well. All right, cool. And so I'll just rename this object to challenge text. All right, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create the two buttons at the bottom of this scene. So to do that, I want them to be children of the canvas. So I'm going to highlight the canvas, right-click, UI, button, and this creates a button in the middle of the screen. I want it to be at the bottom, and the way I drew it out to start, the button takes up a little less than half the scene over there. I'm also going to resize the anchors for this. So I'm just going to grab the anchors and move them to be on the button itself around its frame. I'm going to call this add new challenge button, and I'm going to change the text inside of it to say add new. I'm also going to make this text black. Not a huge fan of how Unity defaults it to that gray color. Now I'm going to duplicate this, and you can do that either by highlighting it, right-clicking, and choosing duplicate, or you can hit Command-D on a Mac or Control-D on a Windows PC, and just duplicate it, send it right over here. So instead of being, just trying to get it centered here, so instead of being an add new button here, this is going to be our display challenge button. Okay, so move this over, just adjusting the anchors here so that they're how they should be. We'll make this display challenge button, and then we'll change its text to let's say challenge me. Okay, so now if we hit play, everything comes up like it's supposed to. You can see that the buttons are interactable. Nothing happens yet because we haven't wired them to do anything or made any scripting yet. There's one more thing that we need to do inside the UI, and then we're good to go. So let's create our new panel as a child of the canvas. So we're going to go UI, panel. I'm going to let this one take up the entire screen. We're also going to change the alpha value on this so that it's opaque, so that when this comes up we can't see what's going on behind it. I'm going to call this the add new challenge panel. And then as a child of this, I'm going to make some text for the top of the screen. And this is going to be add new challenge text. I'm going to change the text to say add a new challenge. I'm going to center this and choose best fit and change the color so it's not that kind of washed out gray. I'm also going to move the anchors of this to fit the box. Again, if you don't adjust the anchors, it won't look right when you adjust the screen size. Now, also inside this Add New Challenge panel, I'm going to create an input field. An input field is what Unity uses to get input from the user. By default, it's this kind of small one. I'm going to make it nice and big so you can add a lot of text to your challenge. Nice and big like that. Adjust the anchors. And I'm also going to adjust the default text that this has, the placeholder text, to say, do you want to challenge yourself? Question mark. I'm also going to make the text that shows up in here centered. Actually, I probably don't want to center it either way. We'll leave it like that. And I'm going to make its color nice and black. Okay, so that's the input field. And now I'm going to add a button that allows you to actually add that challenge. So this button is going to go at the bottom of the scene. And we'll call this Add Challenge button. And we'll change its text to say Add Challenge. Okay, cool. Oh, yeah, I also want to change the anchors for this. All right. So now we're ready to just about wire this up. I want to see how this is going to look though first. Okay, that looks fine. Probably want to make that text black too though. So on this button text, make that nice and black. Okay, so now let's do some scripting here. So we need an object in the scene that's going to be able to control what we're doing with everything. Now you can use one of the objects that's already in the scene to do that. Like you can use the camera or the canvas itself. I like to create a separate object in the scene that just controls what's happening in the app. So I call it an app manager. So to do that, I'm going to just, go here, and I just want to create an empty object. So you can either do create empty, game object, create empty. I like to right click, create empty, and this just creates an empty game object, which is just a thing that's going to exist in the scene. And because it's always going to be active, it's going to be able to change stuff. And I'm just going to call this App Manager. The user will never be able to see it and never even know that it's there. Now, in order to manipulate this, I'm going to create a new C# script. And I'm going to do that by going to my Assets folder here. And inside the Assets folder, I'm going to right-click, Create, and I'm going to choose C# script. I'm going to call this script App Manager. And again, I'm using camel case because this is a class. It starts with an uppercase letter, and then every word that comes after it that I add to it is also uppercase. Before I do anything else, I'm going to add this script to my App Manager. So it's attached to that. Then I'm going to open this up in MonoDevelop. Okay, so let's make this bigger so everybody can see it. Now I'm using Unity's UI system. So up here in my using tags, I'm going to add using Unity engine dot, and then once you hit the dot, you can see all the different stuff that Unity can access. I'm going to use UI. So using Unity engine.ui. Okay, so first I'm going to make a couple global variables that are references to things in the scene. First, I'm going to make a public. Public means you can access it or assign it from the inspector game object, and this is going to be the new challenge panel. So this is that new challenge panel where you can add another challenge to the list. I'm going to make this a game object so that I can turn it on and off from the script, so it's not always going to be there, covering up everything else in the app. I'm also going to make a public input field. And if you can't find input field, if it doesn't automatically come up, that means that you probably forgot to add this Unity engine.ui thing up here. And I'm going to call this new challenge input. And if I'm following camel case, I should change that to capital P panel. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is make a new text. No, not new text, sorry. Public text and challenge text. This is the actual text that the user sees on the main screen that gives them their daily challenge. Then I'm going to create something called a list. Now, a list is similar to an array, which we've dealt with before, but a list is easier for Unity to add and subtract things from. and you can only access a list if you have this system.collections.generic up here, which now in Unity 5.6 MonoDevelop adds always. So we're going to do public list, and then when you're creating a list, you have to have it have something in these pointy brackets after it, either a collection, an enumerable, or the thing that's going to go into the list. So I'm going to do new list of string. So that means I'm going to make a list of strings, which are objects that Unity can. A string is just a set of words or numbers that Unity treats like they're words or numbers. It doesn't treat them like it's an integer or a float. I'm going to call this list challenges. Okay, cool. I'm going to save this really quick, go back into Unity, and make a couple assignments here. So down here it's compiling. No errors, fantastic. So we'll choose our app manager. And now, because I made these things public, I can assign them from the editor. I don't want to do anything with challenges just yet. I will in a minute though. So I'm going to go to my canvas here, and it's asking what my new challenge panel is, and it's going to be my add challenge panel. It's asking what my challenge input is, and that's the input field in that. It's asking what my challenge text is, and my challenge text is this text here. It's part of the challenge panel. So I'm going to add that there. So now it knows what everything is. If I go back into Unity, first thing I want to do is in the start method, I want to make it so that the new challenge panel is inactive when you start the game. So you don't automatically see that. You automatically see the one that allows you to get a challenge, or you can press a button to activate this panel. So we'll do set active, and we want to make this false. So now if we go back in here in Unity, this is our new challenge panel. You can see that right now it's active. I can see it. As soon as I hit the play button, if I did everything correctly, then it should go away and you should see the panel behind it. And there you go. So we don't actually see that, even though it's active first in the scene view down here. The reason that it doesn't do that is because start, which is called, when it initializes the scene, creates the scene, takes that panel and sets it inactive. Now we're not going to be using the update method, so we can just delete it to give ourselves just a tiny bit more performance, not like what we're doing right now. It uses a lot of performance anyway. Okay, so we're going to create a couple methods for those buttons. The first one that we're going to do is, oh yeah, the other thing I want to do too is, so if I look in here, if I hit play, it's going to think for a second. It says just challenge here. I want this to be empty at first by default until we actually generate a challenge. So then up here in the start method as well, I'm going to say the challenge text dot text. So when you do this dot text thing, what you're doing, the challenge text is right here. So I'm accessing this object, which I assigned, and then when I do dot, and then I can access any of these things that are on it by default. If it's not on it by default, if it's a script that I custom added, then we have to do something else. But something that's on this item by default, like its transform, canvas renderer, or text, I'm going to just change its text to be equal to nothing, just open close parentheses. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is create some methods, some functions for those buttons. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to say public, and it needs to be public if you want it to be used with a button, void on challenge clicked. Actually, no, let's do on new challenge clicked first. On new challenge clicked. Open close parentheses because we're not passing any values into this. What we're going to do is we're going to make that new challenge panel active. Dot set active, and this time we're going to make it true. So if you jump back into Unity now, it's going to think for a second. Now I need to wire this up to the button that I want to make that panel actually true. And so that's this add new challenge button. I'm going to add a function to it by clicking plus down here for the on click. So this is something I want to happen when you click it. And I want this to be from the game or from the app manager. So I can either pull the app manager on here or use the circle selector to find the app manager. And then I want to access something from the App Manager. I want it to be in the App Manager script, and it's on new challenge clicked. So now if I hit play, it's going to come up. This text is gone because I set it as nothing in the script or in the start method. If I hit add new challenge, the add new challenge panel comes up. All right, cool. So let's go back into MonoDevelop. All right, so I want that to come active when I click it. Also, let's make a method that adds a new challenge to it. So let's say public, not that, public void, jeez, Mr. Taft. Public void on new challenge added, open close parentheses because we're not passing any values into this. So what I want to do is I want to say if they've entered something. So if new challenge input dot text is not equal to nothing. So if they have entered something, then I'm going to do I'm going to add whatever they entered to our challenges. So the first thing I need to do is get whatever they entered, assuming that they didn't enter nothing. So I'm going to create a string, and this string is going to be inside this method, meaning it's not global, it's local. It can only be used by this method. I'm going to call this string challenge to add, and that's going to be equal to the new challenge input dot text. So this is equal to the text that they entered, assuming they didn't enter nothing. Then I'm going to take that challenge to add and add it to our list of challenges. So I'm going to do challenges dot add, and what I want to add is challenge to add. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, so this is going to happen when they click that button. I'm going to have this new challenge panel dot set active. Actually, I'll do this outside of this. No, dot set active false. No, I'll have this happen outside. The reason I want it to happen outside of this if statement is because whenever they push that button, even if they didn't enter a new challenge, maybe they just want to go back to the other one. So new challenge panel dot set active false. So whether it's an empty string or not, when they push this button, that other panel is going to go away. So now what I want to do here is I want to start adding some challenges to our list. So to do that, I'm going to go to my App Manager, choose my challenges, and for now I'm just going to add like, I don't know, 5 challenges. And let's say eat less sugar today, walk for 30 minutes, read for 30 minutes, say something nice to someone else, and then, I don't know, what can the last one be? Think about something you're thankful for. Cool. All right, so those are our challenges right now. We've got 5 of them. Now I'm gonna not maximize this on play because I want to be able to see something from the inspector. So when I hit play, oh, I need to actually wire up that button first. So we've got the Add New Challenge button, and then in the Add New Challenge panel, we've got the Add Challenge button. Going to click plus at onClick to add a new feature to it. I'm going to pull the App Manager down, and in the App Manager, I'm going to do on New Challenge Added. All right, now I'll hit play. Okay, so I want to add a new challenge, and let's say my new challenge is try running. Click Add Challenge. Now if I go over here into the App Manager, you'll see that now I have 6 in my list, and try running's at the bottom. All right, cool. We're almost done here. So now I want to go over here, create a new method for when we display our challenge for the day. So let's do public void get challenge clicked. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab a random element for the challenges. We're going to change the text for the challenge text to be equal to that string. So to do that, I'm going to create just a temporary integer. So I'm going to call it integer, and this is local again. It's only accessible by this method. So integer challenge to display is equal to, and I want it to be an integer, so it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or negative numbers, but no decimals or fractions, because that's how, if we look over here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's how these are set up as well. So I'm going to do integer challenge to display is equal to random.range, and I want to go from 0, because that's the first element of a list, is 0. Yay, computer programming is confusing sometimes. And we want to go from 0 up to however long the challenges are. So we'll do challenges dot, and then its length if it's an array, its count if it's a list. So challenges dot count. Then I'm going to say that the challenge text, and I'm going to access the text method of that. So text is equal to, open close parentheses, plus challenges, and I want to get the correct one of the challenges. So I'm going to do these square brackets, challenge to display, and then semicolon to close our thought. I'm going to save my script. I'm going to go back into Unity, and I'm going to find my display challenge button after it's done thinking, and I'm going to wire this up to do the get new challenge. So pull the app manager down onto it, app manager, and I want to do get challenge clicked. All right, so now if I hit play, okay, so now if I hit challenge me, it gives me a random challenge for the day. It doesn't look super random because I only have 5 of them in there. So if I go to add new, try running, add challenge. Now if I hit challenge me, that try running should come up at some point. There it was. If I also go to add new and don't enter anything and hit add challenge, if you look over here in the app manager, it didn't add the nothing to it. Cool. So that's how you can make a personal daily challenge app using Unity and C#. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments below, and if you learned anything new, please feel free to press like. Thank you, and have a great day.